story starts in the Demon Castle, where our protagonist reflects that in every era, justice always prevails over evil. A knight asks him if he is the Demon King, to which he replies affirmatively, feeling the weight of his destiny. He proudly responds that he is the great being who rules over all demons, the 100th Demon King, Laruslia Nord. Laruslia then wonders when it all began. Long ago, humans considered demons to be evil. Many of his brethren were killed in the name of justice, and in retaliation, they fought back against the humans. In the end, both sides pointed their swords at each other, leaving no chance for negotiation. Everything was done for no reason. Laruslia knew that the winner of this foolish game would rule the world. However, humans always trembled before great power, and he recalled that the future he foresaw was one where the world's strongest heroes would kill the Demon King. But he thought there was no need to worry, as both sides were already at each other's throats, leaving no room for negotiation. Compared to the Demon King, who holds absolute power, the heroes gain their strength by overcoming trials from gods and spirits. With trump cards in the hands of both sides, the battle is quite fierce. In the end, justice shall prevail, a truth passed down from generation to generation. Which is why Laruslia was eventually defeated by the heroes. As the sword pierced his chest, he understood that the heroes' party was perfectly prepared, consisting of a sword master, a saintess, and an archmage. Regardless, the heroes are justice, while the Demon King is evil. This made him guess that defeating him might be the right thing to do, and he smiled. The knight asks him why he is laughing, and if he is up to something. Laruslia just looks at the knight and responds that the daughter of his friend is having her birthday tomorrow. He then remembers telling the kid named Iris that he would visit, and Iris happily greeted him. He then tells the knight that the end of demonkind is near. Tears falling from his eyes as he says it is regrettable knowing that demons will be hunted down once their king is dead. In that case, little Iris will also perish. The knight stares at him in silence for a moment and then tells him it seems he was not lying. Laruslia replies, "Of course not," and tells the knight that in the end he will reveal the truth. The only thing both sides have done until now is kill each other. The church may call them servants of evil in their teachings, but humans and demons are fundamentally the same. If she doesn't believe him, she should see it with her own eyes from now on, and she will start to question the church's teachings about killing demons. He slowly begins to disappear, telling the knight that if she feels something about demonkind, she should correct it by seeking a future between demons and mankind. The knight continues to stare at him in silence, then reaches for him, replying that she understands. She places her hand on his shoulder, promising that she will believe his words and not discriminate against demons. This makes Laruslia thank her, realizing the knight is a woman, and it becomes a farewell story to hell. The last scene he sees before his death is an angry saintess, making him wonder why she is looking at him with such a hateful expression. But he thinks that, for someone about to disappear, he doesn't need to know the reason behind it. He is confident that, with the knight, the future will be all right. The Demon King, who lost to the hero, disappears from the world, and the story seems to end with a happy ending. But that is not the case. Someone calls him Laru continuously, making him slightly open his eyes. When his eyes are fully open, he sees a smiling lady who tells him, "Finally, you opened your eyes," and greets him with a good morning. He noticed that it was a human lady, and as she approached him, he worriedly wondered what she was planning to do. She then grabbed him gently, telling him that he was a good boy. When he tried to stop her, he saw his little hand. She told him that he must be hungry, held him, and reassured him that his mother would prepare the meal soon. This made him realize that the woman holding him was his mother, and he felt a warm, comforting feeling. Even though he knew he needed to think, he was losing consciousness. In the circle of birth and death, creatures transcend the boundaries of species and are reborn into different life forms. It's a myth that has been passed down in their demon tribe. But Laruslia, who had become Laru, never thought he'd experience it himself. He could clearly remember the days spent with his comrades and his defeat by the heroes. He wondered why he had reincarnated with his memories as the Demon King, and if there was any meaning to it. No matter how much he thought about it, in his current body, all he could do was eat and sleep. He remembered that back then, he was busy with official duties and battles, but after becoming a baby, he was incredibly free. He looked at the maid nearby, knowing he needed to gather information quickly. He wanted to ask the maid how many years had passed since the hero defeated the Demon King, but he realized he couldn't talk and wished he could move on his own soon. The maid then remembered she needed to prepare hot water and grabbed her wand. She began to summon the red burn to light a small fire. He saw it and wondered if it was supposed to be a spell and why they were using such messed up grammar when basic magic shouldn't need chants or tools. He realized that since becoming a baby, he hadn't used magic yet, making him wonder how much magical power he had. He then clenched his cute little fist, knowing that humans have less magical power than demons and he couldn't expect much. But he was surprised to feel the overwhelming amount of magic power inside him, making him wonder if not only his memories but also his magical power had carried over. He felt that the feeling wasn't different from when he was the Demon King, but he couldn't channel magic into his body as smoothly as before. This made him wonder if it was because he was human now or because his body was still underdeveloped. He knew that with some special training, it would work out somehow. He then noticed that no one was around anymore and realized the importance of his power, knowing that without it, he would be destroyed just like in his previous life. 7 years later, LaRue was in the library, freely releasing his power to grab books without standing on his chair. After reading them, he snapped his fingers and all the books he read returned to their shelves on their own. He was a bit worried but glad that he had managed to use magic to a certain extent. He guessed he might be able to use large-scale magic, but he knew it was so powerful that it could blow away a village. So, he couldn't test it. Besides, he really didn't want to do something like that. He stood up and began to walk, thinking that besides magic power, he had understood a few other things. Since the day he was defeated by the hero, he had figured out that several thousand years had already passed, which explained why everything was different. Suddenly, someone called him and his mother found him, saying he was there after all. His mother noticed something and asked if he was reading about the ancient demons' myths again. He replied yes and explained that they were interesting. Ancient demons, once at war with humans, were now considered dubious myths. His mother patted his head sweetly, asking if he really liked to read or if it was just the age of being drawn to fantasy. He just softly smiled, knowing that no one believed in the existence of ancient demons anymore. However, he thought there might still be survivors of the ancient demons around because demons have a far longer lifespan and life force than humans. He was sure he could find them if he searched the globe, but for now, as a 7-year-old kid, he couldn't even leave the village, so he decided to read books for a while. His mother then remembered something and told him that his father, Patrick, would be returning home soon. In his letter, Patrick had said it would be about 2 weeks, and she hoped he would bring back more books. Patrick Caddy's Nora was a sword instructor for the Kingdom of Leonard's Knights and the Lord of Caddy's village. LaRue thought he would get to see his father after so long and wondered if he could get swordsmanship training from him again. But then his mother remembered something else and told him and almost forgot why she came to call him. She asked if she was right in thinking he had plans to play with Rusty and the others. LaRue asked if it was that time already. His mother pushed him gently, telling him to hurry up and get ready because he was going to be late, to which he replied, "Okay." A moment later, he arrived at their meeting place, knowing he was a bit late. Then someone called him and waved. It was Rusty with 2 girls, who told him he was late. Rusty tells LaRue that he has finally arrived and asks if they didn't agree to meet there today. LaRue apologizes and explains that he was late because he was reading a book. Rusty asks if reading is really that fun and insists that if they're boys, it should be all about adventure. Rusty then proudly declares that he is going to be an adventurer someday. LaRue just looks at him in silence. Mai then chimes in, saying that Rusty is always going on about adventure, but hasn't even passed Patrick's swordsmanship test yet. Teasingly, she asks Rusty when he thinks they'll be able to leave the village, which makes Rusty pissed. He tells Mai that she's being too harsh. Yuri agrees with Rusty, saying that dreaming about something is important. LaRue reflects that these 3 kids have been his childhood friends since his reincarnation. He knows that the 2 girls have feelings for Rusty, which is why they don't want him to leave the village. However, he's also aware that whether Rusty realizes this is another matter. LaRue interrupts their conversation by asking Rusty if he hadn't promised something because there was an event today, hinting that Rusty seemed to be looking forward to it. Rusty excitedly responds that Loru is right, and today is the day they were supposed to see the adventurers. Rusty shouts that they're real adventurers. Yuri points out that sometimes adventurers come by, but usually they're just merchants' guards. Rusty insists that this time is different because a top-class adventurer, who blazes trails into uncharted lands and becomes a legend, is coming. He urges them all to go to the village entrance to see them. They are hesitant, but know that once Rusty gets an idea, there's no stopping him. A moment later, they arrive at the village entrance and see people gathering there. However, they are disappointed when they see no adventurers. Loru tells Rusty that it seems they haven't arrived yet, making Rusty disappointed. But then Rusty excitedly wonders if the adventurer will arrive soon and runs to the front, shouting that he's going to check. The two girls chase after Rusty, while Loru smiles, watching them. He reflects that adventuring is a profession that involves exploring lands and slaying monsters. He also knows that while it wasn't needed in the past, even the lands that were once managed seem to be untouched now for some reason. This makes him wonder if it's just the passage of time. Suddenly, Loru heard a panic scream and saw a huge monster running toward the village, heading straight for Rusty, who was in the front. Realizing it was a monster of the forest, Loru prepared to release his power. But then he felt a strong magical presence. An elf used her whirlwind magic to stop the monster from moving. A man appeared on top of the monster and easily cut off its head with his sword, leaving Loru stunned in amazement. The monster disappeared, and the adventurer called out to Rusty, asking if he was hurt. Rusty, who was on the ground in fear, stood up quickly and shouted in excitement about how amazing it was. Mai reminded Rusty to say thank you, and Rusty stutteringly thanked the adventurer. The lady welcomed him and expressed relief that everyone was safe. Loru noticed the lady, but before he could ask anything, Rusty asked the lady if she was a spirit, complimenting her magic and pointing out her pointed ears. The lady replied that he was close, but she was actually an elf, a race created after the spirits, and introduced herself as Yumi's. The adventurer man then introduced himself as Gran, explaining that he adventures together with Yumi's. Loru had never felt such a strong amount of magic power in their village, making him think that both Yumi's and Gran seemed quite capable. Yumi's then told them that many village kids dream of becoming adventurers and asked Rusty if they all wanted to become adventurers in the future. Rusty stutteringly replied yes and excitedly shouted that he wanted to be a real adventurer someday, making the adventurers laugh. Gran then patted Rusty on the head, telling him that while he wouldn't say it was impossible, if Rusty was serious about pursuing it, he'd better train hard because, without proper skills, becoming an adventurer would just get him killed. Rusty excitedly replied yes, making Gran laugh and tell him that it was a good answer, and that he had potential. Gran also tells Rusty that he'll share some adventure stories, but first asks if Rusty could show him to the inn. Rusty eagerly agrees. Maya, observing this, tells Yuri she doesn't want Gran to get Rusty too fired up. Yuri, smiling, asks if boys ever change, no matter how old they get. Yumi's overhearing the girls, asks Loru if it's complicated between them, to which he replies that it's a typical love triangle. Yumi's then asks about him, suggesting he might be part of a love square. Loru responds that he is just an observer. She whispers to him that he's quite unusual and asks if those two girls are cuter than usual, suggesting he should stake his claim now. Knowing this wasn't advice he should give to a child, Loru responds that it's more enjoyable just watching. Yumi's, taken aback by his answer, remarks that he has poor taste. He tells her that's harsh and suggests she must be tired, offering to guide her to the inn too. She agrees, saying that would be nice. As they walk, she tells him they were attacked by a monster on the way there as well. Later, at the inn, alcohol is served to the adults while the kids drink juice next to their parents. Gran begins telling the kids about their adventures, mentioning they stopped by the ruins. Yumi slams her beer on the table and interjects that Gran was much worse, recalling how he insisted on joining a fighting tournament last time. Loru looks at her, bemused, wondering if she really said she was tired earlier. Larue's mother comments that it's great the adventurers are so kind, to which he responds that Rusty and the others are totally attached to them. One of the men asks Yumi's if they came to see the ruins on the outskirts of the village. She replies that no one knows when or for what purpose the ruins were built, but she thinks it might have been constructed by the ancient demons. This revelation surprises LaRue. Gran responded that it wouldn't be that easy to find definitive proof, and even if they did find something, there would be no way to be sure it belonged to the ancient demons. Yumi's angrily asked if it wasn't romantic to think so. LaRue guessed that maybe Gran was right, knowing that ruins can be found everywhere, and, although he can identify ancient demon ruins at a glance, he can't prove their authenticity since the existence of ancient demons is considered a myth. Mai then asked Gran if they always investigated ruins. Gran replied no, explaining that most of the time he defeats monsters, so investigating ruins and participating in tournaments are just his hobbies. Gran added that they were there this time because Yumi's wanted to go, but he also likes taking part in tournaments whenever he gets the chance, making LaRue wonder if they were not there because of a specific request. He thought they were true adventurers, exploring what they liked without being bound by anything, and smiled, thinking that they must be having a lot of fun on their journey. Rusty then told Gran that he really wanted to become an adventurer, and although he needed help earlier, he swore to work harder to hone his sword skills. He begged Gran to take him on as his apprentice. Gran replied no, making Rusty cry, and asked what he meant by no. Gran, panicking, explained that being an adventurer isn't all about cool jobs, especially in the beginning, because there are a lot of chores, and he doesn't have the means to look after him until he becomes an adventurer. Rusty then asked Gran if he would take him as his apprentice once he became an adventurer. Gran laughed hard and responded that if Rusty insisted, he guessed he had no choice and would be his master when that time comes, but warned Rusty that he couldn't teach him much. Rusty was just happy that Gran agreed and thanked him. LaRue, silently watching, noticed that Rusty was surprisingly good at negotiating. His mother commented that she wasn't sure if becoming an adventurer was a good idea, even though Rusty was happy. LaRue reassured his mother, saying he was sure Rusty would be fine because his father said Rusty had good potential. Mai tells Yuri that Rusty is sure to become an apprentice, which makes Rusty even more motivated. Yuri responds that she knows it's a good thing for Rusty, but she feels a bit sad. Suddenly Yumi's appears behind them, making the two girls scream in surprise. She apologizes for scaring them and says she wants in on the girls' talk. She asks if they are having love troubles. Yuri immediately disagrees, and Mai explains that Rusty can be a bit clumsy, so they are just worried about him. Yumi says she understands, though she doesn't specify with whom. She tells them that, in her opinion, Rusty will be able to make his dream come true, and when that time comes, she wonders if they will really be able to just stay in the village and see him off. Before they can answer, someone claps to get their attention and shouts that it's late, so the kids should go home. The kids protest, but they have no choice. LaRue's mother tells him they should head home, which he agrees to, smiling at Gran and Yumi's, thinking they are interesting and wishing he could have heard more. As they head home, his mother asks him when the last time it was that lively. He notices the loneliness that follows a party, realizing that no matter how many years go by, that feeling never changes. His mother then calls him, about to ask if he would leave one day too, but stops herself and squeezes his hand a little, telling him it was nothing. He replies okay, but he knows that his mother understands that someday when he grows up, he'll leave the village. The next day, in the forest, LaRue is holding a training sword and swings it, positions his foot, and swings back his sword and finishes it with a strong slash. He stops and wipes his sweat, deciding that it's all for today. He knows that although his father, Patrick, is an elite knight, if he accidentally reveals his demon lord powers, they'd notice it. As he walks home, thinking he'd like to improve a bit more before the next practice, he hears someone shouting. He sees people looking around, making him wonder what's going on. Someone then calls to him, wordly asking where he was and if he was alone. He replies that he is alone and asks what's going on. The lady then responds with concern that Rusty and the others are missing. He shouts to the lady, asking if she really said that Rusty and the others are missing, but the lady just asks him if he has seen them and tells him that she hasn't found them since that morning. The lady then reminds him that those kids didn't want to leave yesterday, so she thought they might have gone outside without permission. This makes him think it might be the case. If he remembers correctly from yesterday's conversation, Yumi said that she would go to a ruin close to the village, but he has never been there before. He thinks it should be in the opposite direction from their village. He then tells the lady that he understands and he will also look for them. The lady thanks him and warns him not to go to any dangerous place, to which he replies that he will do his best. However, he thinks the safety of those 3 kids is a priority because, after all, they were the first friends he made as a human. He then arrives at the entrance of the village where he sees someone and is surprised that it is Yumi's. She shouts to him to stay back because she will put a barrier around the village. She then calls the innocent spirits who reside in that forest to lend her their power in exchange for her mana and create a wall that divides the village from the forest. He shouts to her to wait and tells her that Rusty and the others are currently missing, making her ask him in panic what he just said. He tells her that they are probably not in the village and everyone is saying that they might have gone into the ruin. If he can't do it alone, he will ask the adults for help. Yet, she just apologizes to him and explains that she can't stop the cast. The mystic wall arcanum then appears at the entrance. He shouts, asking her why she didn't, and she begs him to understand that she needs to protect the people inside the village. Suddenly, they hear a gun shooting at the barrier and he sees that it is coming from a magic machina. She explains to him that those things came out from the ruin and several of them have been flying into the village, which is why she rushed there. He knows that it is bad because their feet are basically magical cannons and it is a magic weapon made by demons to kill humans. He was thankful for Yumi's barrier because their village was safe, but he wondered what would happen if those things flew into the nearby villages or cities. She asks her if she doesn't find it strange because that the ruin itself was not that strange. As they are about to go back to the village, the wall suddenly collapses and Gran should still be fighting the big magic machina. He realizes that it was a trap set in the ruin and knows that if this is the case, there should be a device that controls those machines. He then tells her that he has to go somewhere else right now, making her confused. She apologizes to him because she won't cancel the barrier no matter what, and tells him that there is nothing he can do as a kid. He puts his hand on the barrier while Yumi's tells him that only the caster can designate whether someone is allowed to pass through or not, which is why he should go back home. However, he breaks the barrier using his power, his hand piercing through it easily. Yumi's is shocked and asks what is happening when she hasn't allowed him. He apologizes to her and tells her that he is going to rewrite the magic equation, and with it, the barrier is also his. She asks him what he means by rewriting the magic equation and insists there is no way to do it, but he just passes through the barrier, leaving Yumi's trapped inside. He then tells her that he was a bit worried about the power output of the barrier, so he enhanced it a little. Since he made it from her mana, he also tells her that she should not be able to go outside. He made the same rule about who could pass the barrier, so in case Rusty and the others come back, she should take care of them. He then turns around while telling her that he is counting on her and that he is going to find Rusty and the others. He runs away while Yumi shouts for him to wait a minute. When he is gone, she is stunned, wondering what the hell just happened and if it was really a kid. Meanwhile, in the ruin, Gran is protecting the kids and notices that even though the enemies are active, they don't attack. He shouts to the scared kids that it is possible they only react to moving targets, so they shouldn't move until he gives the signal. However, Gran knows that at this rate, he won't be able to do anything. He then hears someone approaching and calls out to Gran from behind, making Gran shocked to see him. Gran asks him why he is there and what happened with Yumi's. He replies that Yumi's is currently casting a barrier around the village. Gran curses in panic and points to the kids, telling him that since he is already there, he has no choice but to hide with the kids as well. He is glad that everyone looks fine and sees that Gran's opponent is Rups Gigantes, a titan originally built for civil work but sometimes used as combatants in emergencies. He knows that currently, the only person who can stop these titans is him, and he can't back down because the cannon abyss that was flying into the village has very high accuracy for its attacks, which means these titans probably have the same purpose. He walks forward, wondering if they're going to attack from that range, making Gran shout for him to stop and not get close to the titans. Despite this, he keeps walking forward, making Gran beg him to listen. Rusty wordly calls out and begs him to stop, but he just responds that he is fine and tells Gran that he is counting on him. He walks a little closer to the titans, which respond, so he walks backward, and they stay in their position. He tells Gran that the position he is standing in is the limit, and as long as they are not close to the ruin, the titans won't attack them. Gran tells him that it looks like they are protecting the ruin and asks why. He agrees and also wonders why they have been set like this. He doesn't have any memory of the building of that ruin, making him guess that it was probably built after his death. He then tells Gran that he's going inside to check something, but Gran shouts that he won't allow it and he won't let him risk his life. Gran also tells him that the incident is their fault in the first place, so he should just stay silent and come back because he is still only a kid and doesn't have the strength to fight. He asks Gran if he is saying that it should be fine as long as he is strong enough.